Hello, my name is Kelly Reed, and I would like to talk a little bit about the history of Spring City. Primarily the early history and then a couple of historic events that have happened in Spring City. In 1878, the Ray Springs community is where you really have to begin when you talk about Spring City. The Ray Springs community was a community that was built around some sulfur springs. Well, these sulfur springs were believed to have a natural healing power, and people began to travel from all over the United States to the Ray Springs area because of these natural healing powers of these springs. Well, a hotel was built to accommodate the travelers, and eventually a general store, a school, and even a post office. And it's said that one time that as many as 100 homes were in this growing and thriving community. When 1880 the railroad came through, they decided to place the railroad a couple miles west of Ray Springs. Well, this area was called Rayville. It was named that by the railroad company. But the people of the area didn't like the name Rayville, and they soon changed it to Spring City. And of course, like Ray Springs, Spring City was named this because of the abundance of the springs in the area. Well, Spring City was first incorporated in 1890. Spring City had grew from the railroad coming through, and there was a rather large coal and lumber industry at the time, and that's what the early economy of Spring City was based on. So they were first incorporated in 1890. In 1901, the town decided to give up their charter. And the reason why they gave up their charter is because many of the people of the town had become very displeased with the amount of saloons that had popped up in Spring City. Well, in 1907, the townspeople gathered back together and they realized they wanted to be incorporated once more. So in 1907, they became reincorporated, but this time they actually drafted a charter that would ban saloons from the area. In 1933, the Tennessee Valley Authority was introduced to the area, formed and introduced to the area, and work started on Watts Bar Dam. Now, Watts Bar Dam was completed in 1943, and it created a 35,000-acre Watts Bar Lake. Unfortunately, with the creation of this lake, the Ray Springs community, which had the early ties of Spring City, was lost. It was completely underwater. But most of these people relocated just west to the Spring City area and became part of the Spring City community. The forming of this lake caused several resorts and marinas to be built in the area of Spring City, and the town began to take a turn toward more of a tourist town. Through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, families would come to Spring City and spend their vacation on the lake at one of the many resorts that were in the area. And Spring City has primarily remained a tourist town through the years, holding many fishing tournaments and various things that have to do with the lake activities. One of the tragic events that happened in Spring City happened in August of 1955. In August of 1955, there was a train that struck a school bus on the tracks in downtown Spring City. The driver of the bus, Mr. Raymond Moore, stated in the newspaper at the time that he did not see the train coming because of 4 cars that were blocking his view parked along the tracks. Well, as Mr. Moore pulled the bus up on the tracks, he realized then that the train was coming, and he hurriedly tried to exit the tracks, but unfortunately the train struck the rear of the bus, killing 11 of the children on board and injuring dozens of others. Well, this tragic event led to several women that were mothers of the victims of this tragic accident, and several other ladies from town gathered and went to Nashville. And when they got to Nashville, they lobbied the legislators in Nashville to pass a law that would require all school buses to stop at all the railroad crossings. Well, the law was passed, and within 1 year, every state in the United States had passed this same law or one similar to it that would require all buses to stop at all railroad crossings. And this happened because of the tragic accident in 1955 in Spring City where 11 children did lose their lives. I hope you've enjoyed just this brief history of a little bit of the early days of Spring City and how Spring City was formed, and also of just a little bit of informative information about the bus train accident and TVA's influence on Spring City. Thank you.